And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Fighting downside FT off. FT off. It's orange!
Orange 45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? We don't need any more of these.
Good evening, everyone. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where SpaceX is set to launch another batch of Starlink satellites on the 6-73 mission. However, this is not your ordinary Starlink. I know it's overused, except it's totally not, because that's my thing. But this is indeed an historic launch for SpaceX and for Starlink. We'll get to that in just a second. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for this evening's launch attempt, and I see all the 5x5s in chat, which I appreciate. I also appreciate that I'm not alone to cover these. I am joined by Alex tonight. Alex, how's it going?
It's going well, Sawyer, and it is really not your ordinary Starlink. We'll talk about all of the interesting stuff on this mission. Definitely.
Oh, yes. And out there to witness history is D-Wise. D, how's it going?
It is going really well. It is a gorgeous night out here, and I look forward to seeing yet another launch.
Oh, yes. And we've got some fun tools that are being out there tonight, as you can see on the left side of your screen there, to track tonight's launch. So this is going to be exciting for that. And to help provide those views for you, it will be Jay Keegan, the one behind the scenes, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, and counting down funny. So, you have to be there. Anyway, let's get things started then, at least with this mission. And how many satellites have we have? And also, what booster is about to make history here?
Yeah, so we've got 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites on board of this Falcon 9. They're at the top of the rocket, enclosed on that fairing. But I guess a lot of people are wondering, like what's the new thing? And you just already said that it's gonna be the booster for this mission. So, SpaceX likes to reuse their boosters, right? And this mission will mark the first time a booster is flying for a 27th time. That'll be booster B1067. And so it's already flown 26 missions. It's the life leader, I guess, of the fleet of up to 18 boosters that are on the fleet of Falcon 9s right now, currently active. And yeah, it's going to be the first one that's flying for a 27th time. There you can see the list of all of the missions from CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, CRS-25, Hotbird 13G, O3B mPOWER A, Satria, Merah, Putih 2, Galileo, L13, Koreasat 6A, and 15 Starlink missions. Those Starlink missions are not there because they cannot fit. By the way, it's getting to that point, but I can tell you which ones they are. It's Starlink 434, Starlink 52, 55, 59, 610, 622, 629, 635, 645, 655, 85, 83, 670, 1212, and 12.8. And that was its last mission about 57 days ago. And, hopefully we're getting this tonight in about 55 and a half minutes from now.
That is quite a laundry list of history for this booster. And thank you for reading through all of the numbers, too. Yeah, so we can't shrink the font much more than we already do for that while still being able to read it. So we hit 55 minutes to go for this one. I'm sure people are going to be wondering, can I see this launch? Alex, which way is this one going to be going tonight?
Yeah, so this one is going to the southeast, just like the usual, Starlink launches that we've seen lately. That's usually where the best weather is at this time of the year, right? Hopefully, maybe in the later parts, especially during the summer, they're going to return to a northeast trajectory. So, just wait for that. If you are up north, you'll have your time during the summer. But for the meantime, we're going to have that booster and rocket in general just heading southeast, with the booster landing there on sort of the northeast portion of the Bahamas there. And that'll be on Just Read the Instructions, which it's going to, it probably met on the way out there its sibling, A Shortfall of Gravitas, which was where the booster from yesterday's launch, remember there was another launch yesterday from LC-39A, it landed in the very similar location right there northeast of the Bahamas. So definitely lots of action lately, and there's an event. There's another launch as well from 40 here. Hopefully tonight goes on time and everything. It should be going as well in 3 days or so out from Pad 40. So yeah, lots of activity.
Oh yes, keeping the train moving to get those Starlink trains going.
Hey.
Now, in terms of weather tonight, I mean, last night was absolutely perfect. D, how's it looking for tonight?
Well, it is stunning once again tonight. Just from what I can see here, it is basically perfectly still air. The flag here at the press site is not moving one bit. It is clear. There are no clouds in the sky. We have a very bright moon. I don't think quite a full moon. I think that was yesterday, but still a very bright moon in the sky. And the 45th Weather Squadron, who of course keeps a close eye on the weather here for all the launches, they put out the launch mission execution forecast, which breaks down all of the potential risks. And their primary concerns tonight are none. And the probability of violating weather constraints is less than 5%, which is the same as it was for last night's launch, which of course went off and was beautiful. This is about as good as it gets once again for weather.
Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. But yes, that is what we like to see, is that beautiful less than 5% chance. You're never going to see a 0% chance. I think I've seen it twice in all of the years that I've been covering spaceflight. So that is about as good as you will ever see on that official launch mission execution forecast. So that is great. What's also great is support and questions from viewers like you. So if you have any questions, you can tag us at NASA Spaceflight. We will do our best to answer as many of them as we can. Goodness gracious. Including RCA becoming a Pad Rat member. Thank you very much for that. And apparently my ability to read has gone out the window here. So let's see how this is going to go. Astro Guy has a question here, Alex. What are the different versions of Starlink satellites?
Ooh, depends of how far back you want to go. Because there's, all the way back to the Tintin satellites, right? Which were like, boilerplate, so to speak, just with the basics of the satellite. Then you've had the 0.9 satellites, which, they only communicated with gateways on the station, gateway stations on the ground, The 1.0 satellites, which, they were the first ones that were able to communicate with the antennas, the user antennas on the ground, and were the first ones to be deployed, 28 launches of that. Then B1.5 introduced more capacity, a bit of a bigger satellite as well. It also introduced for the first time the inter-satellite laser links. And then we've got the V2 mini satellites, which are much larger, are about twice the size of the V1.0 and V1.5 satellites, and also about twice as heavy as those as well. The V2 mini satellite, in fact, has also had its own sort of, sub versions, so to speak, like sub versions like 1.25 or something like that, if you will, right? The latest one, it's what they call the optimized version of the V2 Mini. So the original V2 Mini was around 680 to 700 kilograms in mass, and it delivered about 100 gigabits per second of connectivity in general. So each of the flights deliver about 2 terabytes per Falcon 9 flight, and they were able to only fit like 20, 21, maybe 23 at most, right? However, with the optimized versions, what they did is they were able to go down in weight while also keeping the capabilities of the satellite. And so they are now able to launch, as we see today, 27 of them. The record that we've seen so far is 28. We've seen, in recent launches here from the Cape. But so that means they can launch nearly 3 terabytes per second of connectivity capability to the Starlink constellation. Now, there's another sub-version, if you will, of the Starlink V2 mini satellite, which is the Starlink direct-to-cell satellite. Now, the direct-to-cell doesn't have the same antennas that it uses, for example, the regular V2 mini uses to communicate with users on the ground. Instead, they replace those antennas with an LTE antenna. And on top of that, as you can see there on that render, they also have a deployable antenna, which extends the area of the LTE antenna to be able to communicate directly with cell phones on the ground. And the way that it works is that, while on the one hand you have the antenna to connect with the cell phones on the ground, those satellites use their laser links to be able to connect to the Starlink constellation in order to be able to provide backhaul connectivity. So that way, you are essentially able to connect to Starlink wherever you are on the globe. You just need to, have your phone out and be able to have, that good signal from that satellite. In general, as long as you have a clear view of the sky, it should work, right? And so, if you're in the middle of the ocean, if you're in the middle of the mountains, and there's no connectivity at all, well, you've got direct to cell. But that's pretty much the breakdown. Of course, we have V3 coming up for Starship as well, twice as large as the V2 mini satellite, and there's also Starshield as well, which is based on the V2 mini satellite bus. But as you can imagine, there's no details about that because, well, classified. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a military type deal. Those classified satellites. In fact, you might know about one of them from today's Shuttle Sunday. If you didn't get to see that, you could definitely check out the replay. STS-27, mission that barely made it home. Anyway, subtle plug, I'm a huge space shuttle fan, in case you couldn't tell, which is why I had to bring up the space shuttle fact. And in fact, yesterday was the anniversary of the first ever space shuttle flight, STS-1, which happened to fall on the exact same date as the anniversary of Yuri Gagarin's first flight, April 12th, 1961. I just find that so cool that those two happened on the same day, 20 years apart. And just a tiny bit to the left of where this one is taking off was where STS-1 launched and began the shuttle program. 135 of those missions. It was so cool. Can you believe it's 64 years, Alex?
Well, I can believe it because it was a long time ago. But it is one of those things that it's like you just have to contemplate how many things have happened in the time since, right? Because it's like how likely it is that just 20 years after the first flight of a human into orbit, we've got also the first flight of a reusable rocket, and now we're seeing here reusability being the norm. Like, we're seeing a booster being reused for the 27th time on this flight, which is more than some of those orbiters from the shuttle fleet, by the way. It's true that it is not the same environment. I'm well aware of that, but it still speaks truth to the fact that it's way too often that we see this. Like, it's multiple boosters now, well past 20 missions. And the other day, yesterday, we saw a booster flying for a 10th time, and that was the 19th booster that had done that, right? Like, how we are in such an era right now that is quite amazing. And they launch humans as well, these reusable boosters. This one actually launched 2 human missions, as we were outlining before. It launched Crew 3 and Crew 4 earlier in its history. Also, commercial resupply missions to the ISS as well, like CRS-22 and CRS-25. I wonder if they will be, some interesting piece of merch that maybe NSF has done to commemorate that.
Wait, there's been anniversary merch to commemorate that?
Yeah, right?
And it's available on shop.nasaspaceflight.com? No way! Jay picking up what we're putting down here, of course. Yes, we have a brand new collection just coming out for the human spaceflight side of things here and the anniversary of humans in space. As we mentioned, 64 years. We've got a whole new line of shirts and mugs and all of these awesome items that were designed by the team. It's orange, as you can see there as well. I've got a couple different designs there. This one is one of my favorites, where you can literally see where we've come and where we're going with the spacewalks there, with the ISS, the Aurora after the first polar launch there, and of course Orion around the moon, and then onwards to Mars. I love that one. And then of course there is the beautiful other ones with the 64 on it, commemorating those 64 years, which is hard to believe. But anyway, all of this available now at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Limited edition special just came out.
That's the whole reason why I mentioned, it supported 2 crew missions, but also 2 resupply missions to the ISS, which, lately we see that it's quite important to have those Dragons ready to resupply the International Space Station. And in fact, next week we're going to have one of those going out from 39A. It's going to be the next launch out of there. So stay tuned, because that one will have an RTLS mission, an RTLS landing of the booster coming back to the Space Coast. So sonic booms.
I believe CRS 32 we're up to at this point now.
Yep.
Wow. That's unbelievable. 32 ISS resupply missions for SpaceX. And of course, there's all the other companies out there as well. You have Cygnus. We previously had ATV. You've got the Progress vehicles. There's a lot. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Really quickly, we had back-to-back 5 gifted memberships here. RC Horseman and Stephen Hill. Thank you very much, both, for those gifted memberships. If you did get one, make sure you give a big thank you to them. Hugh Mann with a really good thought question here, Alex. They're saying, if SpaceX needed to expend a booster, do you think it's more likely they expend this one, B-1067, or expend a different booster so they can keep collecting data from this one?
Well, that is a great question. And, we sort of found out a bit, I guess, into this question. Because recently, if you remember back in January, we had the SpainSat NG-1 mission, right? And that one was an expendable launch. And we all thought, oh, all right, yeah, they're going to expand, I don't know, B-1067. It was at the time on its 25th flight. Or they're going to expand B-1069, which at the time I think it was on its 20th flight and things like that. But no, they expended B-1073. It was not one of the fleet life leaders, right? And so it was like, okay, well, sure. It was still a very old booster. Don't get me wrong. It was the 21st flight of that booster. But, while it is true that it might have a little bit of higher chances, right? You still shouldn't discount the fact that other boosters are also old, and they may get, expended before they expend B-1067. So who knows? We'll see.
We will see, and hopefully what we will see very soon is frost forming on this vehicle, because we are getting towards the all-important parts of the countdown here. So let's take a look at where we are at right now. We should be a couple of minutes away from getting the go for propellant load. In fact, they should be doing the polling, which we don't get to hear, and even if we could, it's all done electronically, so we wouldn't hear anything anyway. Then, once they do hopefully give that go for prop load, they start off with both in stage 1, with the RP1, the rocket propellant 1, the refined form of kerosene, and the LOX, the Loxygen, the liquid oxygen. Meanwhile, stage 2 begins with just the RP1, and that will continue until about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, when we get the best vent as they get ready to chill down those lines, and then start loading in the RP1 on stage 2 at about T-minus 16 minutes. Here's a question from James, and I don't know if we know the exact answer to this, but they're wondering, is there a number of flights that disqualifies a booster for crew missions?
Yeah, so right now, for example, for NASA flights, they are going up to a 5th flight of the booster. So if it's beyond the 5th flight, they usually don't like to fly it on that booster. I believe, though, FRAM2 was the first time they launched a crew mission. That was not a NASA mission, but SpaceX still follows those sort of guidelines with their own private missions, right? With Axiom and Polaris and things like that. In fact, I think Polaris was also it was a fourth flight of a booster. It was not really that old of a booster. But Fram 2 was the first one launching on a sixth flight of a booster. So that was another thing that they sort of did on that mission. But they're gonna get there eventually. Eventually, it's gonna be, I don't know, the 25th flight of a booster, and it's like, oh, it's launching a crew. Okay, whatever. And who knows? Maybe once point to point is also online. They'll be doing flights up until the 1000th flight or something. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, 1,000 flights, that would be absolutely bonkies, as Chris Bergen likes to say. I mean, it'll be bonkies when we get to a 30 flight booster. And imagine once they start passing Discovery, that's when we're really getting into mind-boggling territory, which Space Shuttle Discovery, by the way, was the most flown orbiter in the Space Shuttle fleet. And so that one flew 39 times.
Yeah, I mean, we might get to a 30th flight of a booster probably around the summertime at this rate. If they keep flying 67, of course. If they keep flying 67, those extra 3 flights, if they go 1 month and a half in between flights, then we might see that in the summertime. So stay tuned.
Oh, definitely stay tuned for that. Dylan with a question here. Switching a little bit over to Starship because we have Starship pad right next door there. When do you reckon we'll see research/experiment flights on a crewed Starship orbiter in low Earth orbit, a la early shuttle? What are your thoughts? I'll give mine.
Yeah, I think that's a few years away. I will say at the very least early next decade, if not a little bit later than that. We'll see. We first have to see a lot of things Starship related, right? To get done and everything, and especially HLS will give them a lot of lessons learned in terms of keeping humans alive on a Starship, which is nothing compared to Crew Dragon. You have a lot more room, you have more commodities to be able to put in there, but also at the same time that could be sort of a hazard and things like that. So you have a lot of things there to consider with Starship. So I will give them a few years, next decade at the very least.
I think it might be a little bit sooner, honestly, because as you pointed out, they still have everything they need to do for the human landing services, which includes the lunar landers for Artemis 3 and 4. I think they're going to learn a lot with crew flight on that, even though, again, the crew is launching in Orion and eventually rendezvousing and transferring over to Starship once they get to the moon. I still think that we have a chance for some of those lower Earth orbits flights as they learn more before the end of the decade. I think it's going to be close to like 2029, maybe 2030, but I think they'll sneak it in just before, because you then don't have to worry as much about all the on-orbit refueling and fuel transfers and things that are being discussed for those further outward missions. I think it's possible by the end of the year, personally. Or end of the decade, not the end of the year, no way. Nibbles, by the way, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. We really appreciate that. And one thing we always appreciate with this view, or something that we haven't brought up in a long time, Alex, are you ready?
Oh dear, it's gonna be the 4 towers, right?
No. Yes.
See, I knew it.
Please regale us with the tale of the 4 towers.
Yeah, those 4 towers, essentially they help on the lightning suppression system for the pad. You can see a bunch of wires sort of hanging above the rocket, right? This view is perfect for that, by the way, because you can see those thin cables sort of hanging above, in between those towers. That's what the towers are for, to hang those cables from there. And those sort of form I wouldn't say a Faraday cage, but it's sort of like an arresting cage for the lightning, right? If the lightning were to come, they're gonna hit those wires instead of the rocket, and that's sort of the good thing of this system, that it sort of protects the rocket as it is there on the pad. And so, Florida, the world capital of lightning, right? So you kind of need to get those like you don't see these systems, for example, at Starbase, or you don't see this at Vandenberg, or even at Kodiak in Alaska, right? You see this here at the Cape precisely for that reason. You might also see that one of the lights seems like it's not flashing. These lights are flashing in different directions, and it just so happens that 3 of them are sort of, heading in a direction that's sort of adjacent to the one that we're seeing here. When we go and shoot these launches, whenever possible, of course, whenever we're allowed to cover these launches from the Space Force side of things, that tower is sort of shining that direction. And so that's why, we see it on those views, but we don't see it here in this view that you can see. It seems like, oh, it's not flashing. It is flashing. It's just not in this direction.
Exactly. And with that perfect view, which is why I thought it was a perfect time to actually answer that question, especially because now, at this point, we were hoping that SpaceX is about to start fueling Falcon 9, and that should be underway if they are proceeding towards tonight's planned T0 of 12 midnight and 10 seconds. So we will keep an eye on the vehicle for frost starting to form, which will be the indication that fueling is underway. And of course, with Falcon 9, once they do begin fueling, they are committed to that exact T0, whatever that target is. Let's see here. Here's another question that we get kind of often, but I think there's no better person to answer this one tonight. Alex, how does the Starlink mission get its number, like 6-73? Also, where are these camera views coming from? That I can tell you is from the KSC press site.
I think they just roll at the 100 dice, and they just, name the missions. No, I'm joking. But yeah, right. It does seem like they do that. They essentially, so the mission numbers, you can see there's a number first, which is the 6, and then you've got 73 there. The 6 indicates the type of mission that it is launching. Every single different type of Starlink mission that they launch has a different number. So group 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way to group 15, essentially. And if you were to figure out which different types of satellites they launch, to what orbit, from where they launch, and what's the final operational orbit of the satellites, then you will figure out sort of what are the differences. In the case of Starlink 6, Group 6, that is the first group that they launched with Starlink V2 mini satellites. And these V2 mini satellites go into a 43-degree orbit inclination. So essentially, if you were to compare the inclination of the orbit with that of the plane of the equator, you will see that it is 43 degrees, which means these satellites cover mid-latitudes. For example, it covers things like Central Europe, North America, and also South America, South Africa, and you've got also Australia and New Zealand. So you've got all of these different mid-latitude locations where they can cover. And by the way, you see that switching of scenes. That's because we're looking here at the liquid oxygen tank on the booster, trying to get a clue as to whether they are loading propellant. I'm starting to see some condensation, maybe. Like sort of whiffs of vapor around the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank. That's because, liquid oxygen, it's very cold, it's cryogenic, and so the humidity of the air around the booster, it just gets essentially turned into ice, and it sticks to the side of the booster. I don't know if, sometimes there's also like lines of clear soot, and things like that. So you can, but I do see some of the vapors, which, are also an indicative that it's being loaded. So that's great news.
Yes, that very much looks like prop load is underway. So we will know now that they are going to commit to that launch of midnight and 10 seconds for this evening's attempt, which is a good thing.
Yep. And I can go to the 73 now, which is a lot shorter of an explanation, which is it's essentially the number of the mission. Doesn't mean they've launched 73 Group 6 missions, but it's essentially sort of the mission number, if you will. I can tell you, though, I think they've launched already 73 missions, so this is technically the 74th, even though it has the 73, and that's because they launched another mission few short weeks ago, which was Starlink 680. They also launched 676 and 677. So, there's a few other missions here and there that are out of order. So that's why. But yeah, the 73 is just the number of the mission.
Yeah, again, something we're very used to seeing anyway, back to the shuttle days. For example, again, Shuttle Sunday, we just covered STS-27. The next one is STS-29. We get to 28 eventually, but not in order. So we are now coming up on exactly 30 minutes to go until launch here. We are getting a lot closer to seeing this historic flight of the booster, marking its 27th launch into space. So again, we'll keep an eye out for that LOX chill down. That is the best vent in about 10-ish minutes from now, a little less. And then that will hopefully lead to them begin fueling stage 2. And eventually we will work our way down that count to prop load, entering startup, and hopefully getting that go for launch. Now, am I understanding correctly, D, that view that we saw, I don't think that was digitally enhanced zoom. You have quite a zoom lens for us tonight, right?
No, that was there was no digital zoom in there. That was entirely the telescope view that I've shown before, but with actually double the focal length. So we're gonna give that a try tonight. You might notice it's a little bit soft, especially as we are right at the horizon. It's fighting any of those little air currents, but it should clear up once the rocket gets just a little bit up above the clouds, above the ground, and we should have a pretty spectacular view of hopefully the engines during flight and farther into the phases of flight with quite a long focal length.
And while I have you, D, there's a really good question here from Synod asking if any of you dabbled in astrophotography while you have the telescope out.
Uh, dabbled might be overstating how much astrophotography I've done, to be entirely honest. This telescope is almost exclusively pointed at rockets.
There you go. That's NSF for you. We have people that do astrophotography, but yes, our telescopes are trained on the vehicles that you see there. And again, that is that awesome tight view that you have right now on your screen. Thank you for doing that, D.
Of course, glad to always try some new views.
And one view that we hopefully will see, Human is asking Alex, what would you say is the probability of a lunar jellyfish tonight? And does it help that I'm wearing a jellyfish t-shirt?
I don't think the t-shirt helps with the jellyfish effect, but oh, thank you. That is a great view of the moon over the space coast. I believe that is Max.
It is.
On the left. It's a different view. You'll see that. It's not the usual view. But yeah, we'll have to see. It's a bit of a hit or miss as well. Like sometimes because of where the moon is related to where the second stage is going. Like for example, if the moon were sort of in front of the second stage, you can imagine that it probably doesn't do as much. But if it is behind it or at least above, then it sort of works for the jellyfish effect because it also shines on you and sort of probably works. I don't know. Like we'll have to see later today. Hopefully in 26 and a half minutes plus the 2.5 minutes until until Miko and stage separation. We'll find out. But I think there's a good chance. I mean, it's a full moon, right? So we definitely have more chances than if there was no moon at all.
Yes, the pink moon, the full moon peaking just last night, so still very close to full at this point tonight. So it should be a beautiful view. And again, you see there on the left, Max going a little bit different view for tonight. So this will be exciting to watch. Nibbles asking, can we confirm that in fact that is the fairing? Am I missing a joke or something here?
Yeah, that's the fairing. Why? I don't understand.
I feel like I'm missing a joke here. If I am, please, Nibbles, just
Yeah.
let me know in chat. You don't have to super chat it. Just let me know in chat. Apocalypse Cow, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships, and Bideford also gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you both for all of the support. We appreciate it. And it's an awesome time to become a member as we have the flyovers coming up. And of course, you get some sneak peeks of both the Starbase and the Space Coast flyovers as members. So thank you. Let's see. Koijoy is asking. Oh, there's the ferry.
Now I got the reference. It's because of the Starlink launch that we had with Jack. Oh boy, that was a while ago. That was
Wait.
what, a month ago or something?
Wait, what was that part of the launch? I just remember his Yahoo.
Oh, because you were not there, right? Or you don't remember it. Okay, so what happened is that he went out there. He was trying to get a view from a bit closer to the launch pad, but unfortunately, the signal was not working because Vandenberg is how it is. It's the worst coast, of course. And so what happens is that he had to go somewhere else to get better connectivity. But from that very connectivity area, you couldn't see the rocket until it actually lifted off. And so he went out there. We saw some thing sticking out of the horizon, and it seemed like the fairing. And when the rocket lifted off, that thing didn't move. And we were like, that's not moving, and it should be moving because it's lifting off. And then we saw the rocket to the left lifting off from a hill. It was hilarious because we realized that it was not the thing that we thought it was the fairing. You all should go back and watch that. After this launch ends, of course not right now, but after this launch ends, if you haven't watched that stream, you should go back and watch that. Just saying.
I'm shocked, I tell you, that we didn't have views with a rocket from Vandenberg. Shocked.
Hey, he still got it. And then he it was like, woohoo!
Yes.
That should be in the intro, of course.
I mean, considering he's the one making the intro, the odds of it are, I don't know, 50-50. We are about 23 minutes away from launch here, hopefully. And that brings us to a question from Koijoy, who's saying, with this being the 27th flight of this booster, has there been any talk from SpaceX about the 27th flight or how far they want to keep pushing it? Any chance of pushing this beyond 27 if we get to the dash 28 at the end?
Well, we don't know about this one in particular, but we do know that in the future they want to go up to 40 launches of these, both the boosters and the fairing house. Speaking about the fairings before, right? So you can see also the moon on the right view there. Very nice day to see the moon, of course. But yeah, it's it's one of the things that they've been saying, that they want to certify these boosters all the way to 40 launches. So we should expect at some point in the future to see one of these boosters reaching 40 flights. Doesn't mean that it is going to be this one, though. As I said before, there's a bunch of other boosters that are well into their seniority, I guess, of their lives.
Also, my thought is, if they're going to be catching this booster, or at least attempt to catch it, why would you then get rid of it immediately after? So I feel like we'll at least see a dash 28 on this, and then a 28th flight, I would hope, assuming all goes well tonight.
Now you gotta be very careful with your words, because this one lands on landing legs on a drone ship. It is not caught.
I know, I'm so used to saying it in the old days. Let's just catch it on the drone ship. No, now that they actually catch the boosters with arms, it's
Yeah. We used to say it, as, oh, it's the catch of the day. It's on the boat and everything, right? But now it's like, no, they actually can catch boosters now. Not Falcon 9 boosters, but super heavy boosters. So yeah.
Also, can I just point out that my English is being corrected by someone whose first language was not English?
I'm not correcting you. I'm just warning you.
But it is. Now there's actually a difference between the two.
True.
Oh boy. But yes, this one is set to be caught and flown again, so I think we would at least get a 28th flight. Again, all of this, we have to say, assuming that everything goes well tonight, because it's space flight. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin Michael Reed. Yes, wait, they don't catch Falcon 9s? No, they don't. Are you supposed to be doing something else, by the way?
Yeah, some scaffolding thing or something. I don't know.
Oh boy. Jay, I'm sorry that you're being upstaged here, but I think all of us are about to be upstaged in the next 10 seconds or so by the Falcon 9 that you see on your screen, and in particular, the T minus 20 minute, 20-second vent, aka the best vent. Alex, can you explain to us the vent that is about to be starting now?
Yeah, there you go. It seems like maybe the air is a little bit still, and that's why it's taken a while to see it. But yeah, it started right on time as usual. There it is, the T minus 20-minute vent that is to prepare the line that goes to the second stage ahead of liquid oxygen load around T minus 16 minutes in the count here. Then you can see sort of the milestones that we're going through here on the countdown. The RP1 load on the second stage has already wrapped up at this point. So only going into the liquid oxygen tank. The first stage is still loading liquid oxygen in RP1. The RP1 will wrap up that load on the first stage at the roughly T minus 6.5 minutes in the count. And liquid oxygen load will wrap up on the first stage at T minus 3, and on the second stage at T minus 2 minutes respectively. So there you go. That's sort of the primer on the priming of the rocket, I guess.
Yes, prime time for this right now, in fact. So 19 minutes hopefully to go until this launches 27 of the Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit. As we mentioned, this booster making its record-setting 27th flight into space. River Dave is wondering, what is the trajectory of this launch? I've got some friends visiting the Keys just now. Do you think they'll get a show? Alex, do you think they'll get a show? I think they will.
Oh yeah, I mean, you should definitely have at least some sort. I don't know how far west in the Keys, right? They are in, but there you can see sort of the trajectory there, going southeast, landing with a booster there, to the northeast of the Bahamas. So yeah, it depends just how far west you are in the Keys, right? If you are more to the east, you're gonna be a little bit closer of that trajectory. So hopefully you get a nice view of that. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Just try. As I always say, you don't lose anything by trying.
You lose by not trying, as we can all
Exactly.
attest to here at NSF. Starship Flight 8. Anyway, not mad. At this point now, we are getting quite close. And Alex, do we know what shell this is kind of going into, where it's launching angle-wise? Because obviously we have the trajectory there, but what about where these satellites are actually going?
Yeah, these are going into a 43-degree inclination orbit, as I mentioned before, right? These sort of inclinations, those orbits, are very good for mid-inclination, mid-latitude coverage, excuse me, because, 43-degree inclination, it means that you've got these orbits sort of inclined 43 degrees relative to the equator, which means when you have a bunch of these overlapping together across the Earth, and so you have multiple planes of these satellites at 43 degrees, it means that there's a lot of overlaps around that 43 north or south latitude. And so that means you've got all of those satellites most of the time being on those mid-latitude locations, which in turn, that's where pretty much everyone in the world is located, right? Like the great majority of people are either in the mid-latitudes to the north or the mid-latitudes to the south. Like Australia, New Zealand, and you've got also South America as well. You've got South Africa. I mean, we saw, I don't know if we can bring back the graphic for the second stage reentry. It's right to the south of South Africa in the Indian Ocean. That's essentially more or less there. You can see the bottom of that orbit of that 43 degree orbit is right there in those areas, as you can see there. So you can imagine a bunch of these different planes, right, in orbits, and they are all crossing around those areas, which means there's going to be a lot of satellites in the areas where a lot of people live. Again, sort of the same deal with the northern hemisphere as well. 43 degrees, that's, Central Europe. You've got the US, sort of the northern ports of the US and everything. We've got a lot of coverage there.
Exactly. And as we hit the 15.5 minute mark, at this point, you'll notice the 20-minute vent is gone, which is a good thing. That means at this point that we should have fuel loading of the liquid oxygen underway. So I should say oxidizer loading on the second stage. Meanwhile, stage one continues to get that RP1, the rocket propellant one, and the liquid oxygen into that. And as you pointed out, that will continue on till about the 3-ish, 2-ish minute marks, depending on which tank we're talking about specifically. Let's see here. A couple of other questions. I see people asking if there's any chance of a lunar transit tonight. We will have to see what our team is able to get with that beautiful full moon. But Alex, there was another event in the sky that some people saw, I believe, over Texas. That was actually related to Starlink and Falcon 9 launch, right?
Yeah, so we saw that graphic before of where the second stage re-enters, and you have to imagine that around a quarter or halfway, between a quarter and a third, halfway across the globe, to the west, that's where it does the orbit burn, right? And because the orbits go, north, south, south, north, and everything, when you do see the sort of globe, right, you see that the orbit burn has to happen somewhere around, the portions of Texas, Oklahoma, and everything, right? So what a lot of people saw yesterday was yesterday's launch, that Starlink 12-17 mission out of LC-39A. It also went to a 43-degree orbit, and it just so happens that in order to re-enter over the Indian Ocean, about a quarter to a third of the orbit before that, they need to do the orbit burn. And after the orbit burn, they also vent all of the essentially all of the propellant and everything. They drain the batteries, they save the rocket stage essentially. So that's what a lot of people saw in Central Texas yesterday. I believe it was also seen in some parts of Southern Texas, northern portions of Mexico. So, lots of people were able to see that yesterday. Mainly the reason for that, it's because of when the launch happened here from Florida. It happened a few hours earlier than today's launch. So it just so happened that when it flew over Texas, it was still being partially illuminated by the sun, and so people were able to see that cloud of gas illuminated by the sun. It sounds like like the line that they say in Men in Black about the clouds of Venus or whatever reflecting or something like that. But it is true, right? It was sort of a jellyfish effect of that venting of the second stage as it was sort of saving itself before re-entering in the Indian Ocean. And it's one of those things that we see very rarely, because most of the time these things are done right in the middle of the night and there's no illumination or anything. And so yesterday just so happened that it launched right at the at the time that later, an orbit later, was able to be seen from the ground. Yeah, swamp gas reflecting off Venus. Thank you, Psycho Mike Gaming.
There you go. 12 minutes to go here. D, weather-wise, how are we looking right now with 12 minutes to go?
It is just as good as it was at the start of this stream. Perfectly clear, as we saw. A bright moon is out. No clouds in the sky. The only reason that the stars are a bit hard to see right now is because the moon is just that bright. It's making some lovely shadows, and it's really easy to see out here. It's pretty great for a night launch right now.
That's what we like to hear. A beautiful night. You can see Max's view on the left, D's view on the right of some beautiful skies tonight as we get ready to launch 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. The first stage will attempt to land after its record 27th launch on Just Read the Instructions located downrange. I mean, this booster, Alex, can you give us some of the highlights of just the major missions that this booster has flown for people just joining in?
Yeah, we were mentioning that it had launched 15 Starlink missions before, so that's a lot of Starlink launches that it has carried out. Of course, a lot of Starlink satellites. I wish I was more advanced on my own spreadsheets, because then we will say, oh, it's launched this many satellites. But one day I'll get there. But then you can see a lot of other customer missions as well. Launching Galileo satellites, a bunch of other geostationary satellites like Turksat, Hotbird, Merah, Putih, and Koreasat, in Satria as well. But it also supported a bunch of crew-related or directly crew missions, right? You can see Crew 3 and Crew 4 launching people to the International Space Station, but also cargo on CRS-22 and CRS-25. So definitely a story booster here.
Oh, yes, very historic. And again, as we reach a historic milestone just yesterday, marking 64 years since the first human launched into space. As you mentioned, the human spaceflight there, Yuri Gagarin launching April 12th, 1961. And of course, STS-1, the first space shuttle flight, launching on April 12th, 1981. So it is the perfect time to commemorate that human spaceflight anniversary with merch that we have at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. 2 awesome new designs to take a look at, including available on shirts, on mugs, on sweatshirts, all of the awesomeness. We have the one that takes a look at where we've been with the ISS, with the onward looking of the first EVA from a private company aboard Dragon. You've got the mission around the poles for M2. You've got Orion out there around the moon as well after the recent Artemis 1 and hopefully Artemis 2 and 3 missions coming up soon. All of this now available as awesome merch at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. A huge shout out to the shop team for the awesome work on that. And it's orange. Let's see. Apocalypse Cow with the 2025 super chat saying full moon swamp gas for the win. There you go, Alex. And then Kevin Brett asking, Alex, what is the life expectancy of a Starlink satellite?
Well, the original ones were built sort of with a 5-year lifetime, sort of, the original plan was that some of them have stayed in orbit for a little bit longer than that, actually. Because if you remember, the first batch of satellites, that V0.9 mission, that was in May of 2019. So that's coming up almost to 6 years from there. But there's also been other missions as well, like the first, all of those satellites, by the way, were deorbited a bunch of years ago because they were merely just test satellites. They were not meant to be operational satellites. But they started operational satellite launches already in November of 2019. So it's been more than 5 years. So some of those are still in orbit. So definitely some of them are already out there. But they have their own propulsion systems. So whenever they see something that it's odd, they just deorbit them, or at least lower their orbits and try to do some checkouts. And if for whatever reason they fail or something like that, then they're going to be a lot lower, and therefore they're going to just re-enter within months instead of staying up there for years and years. Some of them, unfortunately, they arrive there and suddenly, out of the blue, they just stop working. It's a very small number of those, and so they are still up there, and they're going to be up there for a while. But it's a really small number, trust me.
Yeah.
Jonathan McDowell has all of the stats for that, by the way, if you want to know.
Yes, and of course, they do intentionally deorbit so that you don't get all that space junk as they start to reach their end of life. Speaking of end of, D, I know we are about to reach the end of our commentary coverage with you for now while you go focus on the cameras for today's launch. So we will talk to you afterwards.
Absolutely. I am really, really looking forward to this one. I just have to say, if you are in the area, keep this stream on for all the updates, but step outside, try to see this with your eyes. It is always a sight to behold.
Thank you very much, D. We'll talk to you shortly. Meanwhile, as we hit under the 7-minute mark now, the engine chill should be underway for those 9 Merlin 1D engines, right, Alex? What's still to come now?
Yeah, should be already wrap up also on our P1 load on the first stage as well. Should be coming up on the Strongback retraction. We'll have that, well, you cannot see it right now because there's the crew access tower there in the way. But behind that and next to the rocket is the Strongback, right? That sort of adjacent and support structure to the rocket that allows them to be able to fuel the second stage, do a bunch of purges also on the intrastage and fairing sections. And hopefully they'll get into that retraction here in just a minute or so. They're going to be opening the top clamp on that Strongback, retracting it about 1.8 degrees away, and then at liftoff, it'll pull the way out from the rocket to leave way for that liftoff, hopefully in 5 minutes and 18 seconds from now.
That is what we are hoping for at this point. We are getting very close to the T0 here now. So, as you mentioned, we'll keep an eye out for the retraction of that Strongback. That transporter erector basically helps provide all of the propellant loads, in addition to electrical, in addition to data, in addition to, I like to call it air conditioning for the satellites, basically the thermal conditioning to keep them happy before they launch into space. All of that from one little metallic structure that they've gotten really quick at being able to raise it, lower it again, reload it up, and launch a couple days later.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. A couple of days later, I mean, the next launch out of this pad is scheduled for just 2 days and 22 hours from now. So,
of course, we need to get this one off the ground first, and that is what we are hoping for in about 4 minutes and 20 seconds from now.
Started.
And there is that audio confirmation from SpaceX that they are indeed retracting the Strongbacks. There are clamps that go underneath those fairing halves, and those will unclamp, and then it will retract 1.8 degrees.
look at that booster. I don't see any frost. Did you see any frost on that side of the booster? Because it
Barely
looks like it's just soot. Yeah, right? It's just soot.
Yeah, again, a reminder, this is the 27th flight of this booster, the first SpaceX booster to reach 27 flights, and they do not clean the boosters in between. We are now 3.5 minutes ago. We should be getting callouts as they begin wrapping up propellant loads on the first and second stages here. So we will, of course, listen out for those callouts as we watch this rocket get ready to go.
And as you were able to see there on that other view, the fairings are also flight proven. We don't know usually how many flights they're flying on this mission because SpaceX doesn't release that kind of information, but you can see when it's heavily used.
Yes, it is definitely quite obvious. So we hit the 3-minute mark now. On board, 27 Starlink V2 mini satellites, and there are none of the direct-to-cells on this. This is just the regular V2 minis, correct?
Yep, just good old V2 mini satellites directly to the user antenna. Nothing about cell phones here.
And
that was yesterday.
Yes. And even though this is the 27th flight of this booster, they hope to have it land on the drone ship, just read the instructions, located a little over 500 kilometers downrange. And that is expected to then happen. So 27 launches and 27 landings, hopefully, for this booster. So next up will be the final call of loadouts, and then they will begin closing out the gas vents there. So you'll see another vent very similar to what we saw at the 20-minute, 20-second mark. So what can we expect in the last 2 minutes here, Alex?
Yeah, we'll have that close out of liquid oxygen load on the second stage, getting that tank fully loaded and Falcon 9 prepared for flight. We're going to have a T-minus 1 minute, the handover of the control of the countdown from the ground computers to the onboard computers. Well, there you go. Falcon 9 now loaded with propellants for flight. They're going to have now the gas closeouts. We can see there that Strongback venting as well as part of those closeouts. As I was mentioning, they're going to have that startup sequence at T-minus 1 minute. They're going to hand over the control of the count from the ground computers to the onboard computers. At the same time, Falcon 9 will run thousands of checks of its systems, automated checks, to be able to make sure that everything is ready for launch today here in just 1 minute and 20 seconds from now. There we go. Those are the gas closeouts ongoing right now. And of course, we're hopefully going to get that go for launch from the launch reactor T-minus 45 seconds. And, that last minute, it's very active. Things like FTS, things like, stage pressurization and everything. That's all going to happen in that last minute.
There we go. And speaking of that last minute, with 1 minute to go, we should get confirmation shortly that Falcon 9 is in startup with the onboard computers taking control.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There we go.
There we go.
Tanks are also being pressurized to flight levels, The next thing, we should get the call out if they have given the go for launch tonight. So we'll listen for that from the launch director.
Launch director, go for launch.
There we go. 30 seconds now until liftoff. Everything is go. As a reminder, we will stop talking after it lifts off so you can enjoy the beautiful sounds. It does take a little bit for it to reach all of our microphones, so bear with the laws of physics on that. 15 seconds to go. Next up, there will be rainbirds, as we call them, which is sort of water deluge at the base of Falcon 9. It can be a little hard to see from here. That will be followed by engine ignition and liftoff. And there is that engine ignition. Liftoff of Starlink 6-73, booster 1067 on its historic 27th flight, and that is now underway. Listen to that, passing through max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, and you could hear the VAB squeal, as we like to call it, the panels on the vehicle assembly building rocking and making that noise based off of the Merlin 1D engine's resonance. It's so great to hear. And as we get to the thinner parts of the atmosphere, you'll see the plume expand on those 9 Merlin 1D engines. Amazing views tonight from D and Max. Now we are coming up shortly on 3 events in rapid succession, starting off with MECO, main engine cutoff, when those 9 Merlin 1D engines shut down. That will be followed by stage separation of the first and second stage. And then finally, we should have STS-1, second engine start 1, ignition of that single Merlin vacuum engine on the upper stage. So we will stand by for those events momentarily. And that's MECO. Next will be stage separation. You can kind of see 2 dots there. And then next up will be that. The ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. That looks good. And those 27 satellites continuing on their way to orbit. Meanwhile, booster 1067 for the 27th time doing its job and about to head on its way downrange for a date with a drone ship. Also next up should be the fairing separation. Those 2 protective halves around the satellites. And there they go. What a view from down here, and we'll get the SpaceX confirmation shortly from that.
And back propulsion is nominal.
Also what we like to hear, propulsion nominal.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Our camera's a little bit ahead of SpaceX's in case you can't tell. And look at that, Alex.
Yeah, there we go. You can even see the fairings.
Oh my
I could
gosh.
see one of the I could see one of the little dots there illuminated by the MVAC. Ah, there we go again.
Wow.
See,
And,
to the left of the exhaust from the MVAC, it's separating because obviously the second stage is picking up speed, relative speed with a fairing. But there you can see it.
Yeah, that was not a star. That was a fairing half.
Yeah. The stars are the ones that are moving across the field of view because obviously, the second stage is accelerating in that trajectory, as we're just hearing on that call out. It's continuing in its trajectory to orbit, and of course, as we track the stars will just pass by.
Oh,
Ooh, look at that.
Listen to us. Look at that. I think this is a perfect explanation when people ask, what do we mean by lunar jellyfish? Alex, I think this is a good definition of it, right?
Yeah, it does look like a jellyfish. So it's saying, it also affects the way that the moon is located in the sky, right? And so today it's right above the second stage, in this case. So really nice. Because
Yeah.
yesterday it was out, but it was like only a little bit instead of in front of the second stage because it was a bit earlier in the day, right? But today you can see it's a lot brighter.
Yes, again, the light hitting that expanding plume as it gets higher up, and the way that it lights that exhaust, looking, as you can now see, just like a jellyfish. So when we talk about jellyfish effect and what we mean by that, I mean, that was the perfect shot to exactly explain it. It looks like a jellyfish. All right, so what's still left to come here for the first stage and the second stage now, Alex?
Well, the second stage is in its coast phase. It's already coming back down through the atmosphere. It should be coming up on that entry burn in just a minute or so from now. Firing fire with fire, as you usually say. Firing those three engines, engine 1, 5, and 9, on the booster to be able to slow down, protect itself through that reentry portion on its flight. And you can see some of that telemetry and data from SpaceX and the views from the booster as well. Very dark out there, but you can sort of make out the outline of the Earth, some of the clouds down there, thanks to the moonlight.
Yes, first stage. Not stage 2, first stage.
Stage 1.
Yeah, the first stage.
Stage 1.
And
entry
here
burn
comes the entry burn.
startup.
Oh, I love seeing it blast through the grid fins there as it lights up, and you can see with that line, that looks like all three engines that are supposed to be up and burning for this entry burn.
Yep. There you can see the speed going quickly down. Should be shutting down soon. You'll see first the speed. It's
Stage
always
1
first on the
entry burn
telemetry and
shutdown.
then on the video. That's why they can call out the shutdown before we see it on the video as well, as you've, been able to hear from the mission control.
Yes, and that first stage now 30 kilometers up in altitude and dropping quickly. And now as it hits the thicker part of the atmosphere,
Yes, saved.
that speed will cut down as the flight termination system is safed on stage 2. And you can see we still have a track on stage 2, 2 of them in fact, from our cameras. Look at that. Now next up for that first stage, again, will be the final landing burn and hopefully landing leg deploy and touching down on just read the instructions downrange. And then that will be followed shortly after by SECO 1, second engine cutoff 1.
Stage 1
That is the
transonic.
shutdown of that second stage.
Here we go. Some of the signal coming in and out.
Have they tried wiggling the cable a bit?
Yeah, that green does happen sometimes when you wiggle the cable. But as I was mentioning before, you'll see that speed dropping first and then the video. In fact, there we
Stage
go.
1
It's
landing
already
burn.
dropping.
And you can see that dot there is the drone ship off that left grid fin. Those grid fins will now help steer the vehicle. It doesn't aim at the drone ship until all the data looks good, and then it will do that sharp turn right towards the deck.
There's just read the instructions on the right.
Landing leg deploy.
Stage 2 and terminal guidance.
And
Stage 1
touchdown.
landing confirmed.
History made as Booster 1067 becomes the first ever Falcon 9 to fly and land 27 times. And we should be coming up on second engine cutoff here momentarily. And with SECO,
And back shutdown.
Here it is.
that means the booster did exactly what it needed to do 27 times in a row. That is unbelievably awesome. Oh boy. D, I don't know if we have you there. Any thoughts on this one?
This was a good one. I'm trying to get working on the footage right now, so I'm gonna be focused on that.
All right. Sounds good. But the sounds from that were indeed amazing. And I know I briefly mentioned it, but that VAB squeal was that kind of rattling sound you heard. Stay tuned. We will have replays of it, including the sound, so you can hear that once again. But it just so happens that the vibration from those Merlin 1D engines rattling matches the resonance of some of the paneling on the VAB, the vehicle assembly building, and you get that awesome squealing sound. And it's funny, someone at NSF was asking about that sound. Hey, do we have any good sound of that from any recent launches? I think we could say we do now.
Yeah, we all went to Bingham and be like, this launch has a really great audio of the VAB squeal.
Yeah, so we could do a better in-depth dive into the details behind what makes the squeal squeal.
We should go and interview sort of the first engineers working on the VAB panels or something like that.
I mean, it was built in the mid-'60s, so you never know. Matrix, by the way, asking, do other engines provide a VAB squeal, or is it exclusive to the Merlin? Side note, when was it first noticed? Alex, I don't think we've heard it from other rockets. At least I can't recall hearing it from any other vehicle.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot say firsthand, of course. I just have to hear what I hear on our streams, right? And so far, I've not heard that from other rockets. I don't know, maybe if the people in the field have heard differently. You've been in the field multiple times out there for other non-Falcon 9 rockets, but I don't know. It just seems like it's a thing with a Merlin engine.
No, it seems like it's just Merlin from everything I've heard.
Yeah.
I've heard a bunch of different vehicles, and I don't remember ever hearing another engine make that sound. And even so, it's very rare that you hear it from 39A. It's typically from Pad 40 or LZ's 1 and or 2 that you get that sound. And Tyler, by the way, asking, is there something on fire over at Pad 40, which is what we're looking at now with the empty launch pad?
I think they're looking at the orange light.
Yep.
Behind the bushes. It's just the orange light. It happens.
Yep, so that's totally normal. Sometimes you may see smoke or something like that. That's usually burning off the remaining T-Teb, which is the igniter used to ignite those engines.
Yeah, and there's no flare stack, by the way, at Slick 40. Falcon 9 doesn't use any sort of, flammable. I mean, you could say that maybe RP1 is flammable, but it doesn't need any flare stack because it doesn't, boil off or anything like that. It doesn't need that sort of setup.
Exactly. But what we do need is a totally brand new original line that hasn't been used in any other launch streams before from Echo Deal, saying when the moon hits your plume and it makes the light bloom, that's a jelly. For anyone who was watching last night, I know Max was asking, wait a minute, is that the first time we've heard that one? No, it's a great one from Echo Deal, but we still love hearing it. What time is the squeal? Stick around, we have the replays, and I promise you'll be able to hear it very clearly inside the replays, and get to do the math on that of when it happened, where it happens, all of that fun stuff. So the replays are indeed pulling, and based off of what we saw just from cutting through the different cameras, it should be quite a beauty. Colton was asking, by the way, do these rockets ever get the engines replaced?
Sometimes we obviously don't have any insight into when exactly they get changed or anything like that, but they do change, yeah. Even between boosters, like sometimes when one engine gets removed from one booster and then it goes into another different booster, they do tend to do that. We don't know the frequency either, but we know that they definitely do that sort of thing because of multiple comments, both from officials at SpaceX, but also indirect comments, such as, there was one point where they said something along the lines of like, there's a Merlin engine in this flight that is flying for a 22nd time, and the booster was flying only for a 19th or an 18th flight. So it was like, yeah, so that Merlin has been between multiple different boosters, of course, in order to get to 22 flights.
Yes. And I should point out, we've got the slow motion replay coming from D. We've got the regular motion replays from Max and all of our robotic cameras. But they weren't the only ones out for us tonight for this launch. We also had Julia Bergeron out in the field, and she got another amazing streak shot. Her work is absolutely spectacular. Take a look at that. With the full moon right over the palm tree. That doesn't scream Florida. I don't know what does. I mean, I guess you would need lightning and alligators and naked people, but I guess in terms of a beauty shot, it doesn't get more Florida gorgeous than that. That is spectacular work, Julia. Don't ask Kevin. But yes, very nice work. If you don't follow Julia on socials, you absolutely should. She gets some of the most spectacular beauty shots of the rockets with nature and the surroundings around it. As much as we love the close-up rockets, there's something about seeing it just in its natural habitat like that I love. Make it sound like an animal in its natural habitat. You know what I mean. Check it out. Those replays are working, and it looks like they're already going to be starting to raise that transporter erector. So what happens, Alex, by the way, with getting that TE, that thing that's leaned back there, reset and ready to launch again in 2 days and 22 hours?
Yeah, so it should be going up, and then once it goes up, they're going to be safing all of the stuff and everything on that Strongback. It'll then be put horizontal again. They're going to be refurbishing and sort of, inspecting those ground systems. And once ready to go, that Strongback will go up again. It'll pick up the reaction fixture at the bottom, which sort of connects to the ground support systems on the launch pad. And then the whole transport erector will roll back to the hangar. They'll put the rocket on the transport erector and roll it out again for that next launch, which, it doesn't happen that often, but it's a nice one because it's 674. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes you've got 660 something and then it's 680 and then, you've got jumping around, whereas this one is just 674 after 673. So good.
Yes, it's amazing how they've gotten that down to a science at this point of being able to get it done so quickly too. I mean, this is quite the view. Also, I see a bunch of people still asking questions about the VAB squeal. Someone saying that they heard it off of a corrugated building siding from fireworks. Is it from individual sound wave peaks? All of that. Maybe we should ask some people about it. I don't know. Maybe it would be interesting if there was something in the works about that and why we needed this particular audio tonight, actually, to hear it. Yeah. So I guess there's interest in it. Yes, Kevin, you can say I'm leaking. It's fine. So there are a lot of cameras for this replay, which is why it's taking a little bit longer. We had so many people out in the field. So stay with us. It's coming. And they should be amazing for us tonight here. Oh, boy. Human is wondering, is SpaceX refurbishing engines from B-1086 at all?
I have no idea.
Good answer. No, I know they're not very forthcoming of which engines are refurbished from when, from where. It's a lot of secrecy in that way, but I mean, it works.
Yeah.
I mean, is it safe to say though that there's maybe some of those original engines still on there? So we take a look.
Maybe. Oh, there we go.
So we take a look
from
at this
Max.
amazing view from Max. Again, awesome with that full moon. And you can see right where that stage separation happens too, with that little poof of smoke there. Absolutely spectacular work from the field team, as always. That is quite a view. But you were saying, Alex, about the engines?
Yeah, I was gonna say that we don't know for sure, right? That's one of the things that I sort of was explaining about before, that they do change them. We know that's something that happens. We don't know the frequency. We don't know what changes. We don't know, what Merlin goes to what booster and things like that. Unfortunately, we don't have that sort of insight. So yeah, we don't know, but we know it happens.
That is true. We do know it happens, but it's hard to tell, and it's not even like Starship where they lift it so we can, if the booties are off, kind of get an idea of it or get an engine shot of it. It's all really just a matter of, what can we see as it comes back on the barge out to port, which we can see all of them come back, in case you don't know, on our Space Coast Live 24/7 cameras. Let's see. Again, there are amazingly 10 replays coming, 10 cameras for a Starlink launch, which is very unusual. River Dave wondering, Alex, what's the status of the Atlas V carrying the first Kuiper flight?
Well, right now we have no clue as to what's sort of the holdup right now. Excuse me. We saw that it scrapped on, I think it was last Wednesday, when it attempted its launch, right? And there were high winds, and also there were clouds as well in the area, and so it was not able to launch at that time. Then I believe Troy Bruno told about conflicts with the range and everything, but these two launches have already happened, right? These two Starlink launches have already cleared the range, so maybe it's something else that it's sort of keeping it on the ground right now. We'll see. It's one of those things that we'll probably find out a lot closer once it happens. We don't know when it's going to happen, unfortunately.
No, we do not, but it's sometime in 2025 at least. We know that. And we know it will be before the next Vulcan flight because they occupy the same launch pad, so they would have to destack everything for that. So hopefully we get that launch soon. And again, when we did the last KSC flyover, it was still out on the launch pad along with the launch that happened last night. So some awesome views that we will see in the Cape flyover coming up soon of all of those out on the launch pad. Let's see. When will Max get a Nightbot command? Wait, he doesn't have a Nightbot command? Huh. We'll have to change
Sounds like a job for Chris B.
Matrix with another good question. Alex, do we know the theoretical fastest pad turnaround time? Not counting booster travel time, etc.
Well, they've been able to go down to 2 days and 8 hours. So I think an under 24-hour turnaround might be possible if they had, if they didn't have to care about transporting the rocket, right? They could probably do that. It seems like the refurbishment nowadays it's barely even refurbishment, if you will. Like it's maybe like a touching here and there a little bit of the hardware, and taking a look at at all of the ground systems and inspecting it here and there. But at 2 days and 8 hours, it's like, what else are you gonna do, right? In terms of refurbishment, definitely not setting up like, oh, we're gonna remove a whole clamp or something like that. Like that kind of work takes a lot more time than any of that. Plus, you gotta move the rocket and everything. So yeah, I think under 2 days is definitely possible for the Falcon infrastructure as it is right now.
All right, so we're getting there to it, and how far are we in terms of our goal, by the way, or at least SpaceX's goal of number of launches this year, with how fast they're still able to turn things around?
Well, this one, if I'm not mistaken, it was the 43rd Falcon launch of the year. So right now they are currently, if they keep this cadence as it is, they will be on track for 152 launches by the end of the year. But of course, that assumes that they keep the same cadence that they are doing right now as what they've been doing since the start of the year. They could, in theory, ramp up a little bit, even if it's like 5 or 10%. You're still adding something like in the order of like another 5-10 launches. So you're already crossing 160 launches, which it's bonkers to think about, a company being able to launch pretty much every 2 days on average. So yeah, that's quite a lot of activity.
Yeah, and the fact that they have enough payloads to launch to be able to do these 2-day turnarounds as well. Can't forget that part.
Yeah. In terms of how many launches they did last year, that was 134, so it will be quite a lot more than that this year. Ooh, replays.
Yes, here we go with the replays that we've been promising. I believe this is Max's view, which was a little bit to the north of the press site where D is. Yes, this is Max's view. So as much as we have these super awesome close-up views, if you go out and see a launch yourself, you're very likely to see something similar to this at night. And what's also cool is when we talk about, having night turn into day, this is also a great representation of what it's like to just see the sky light up. You have the full moon already, and now add in the launch itself. Absolutely spectacular views, and on such a clear night nonetheless. Came so close to the moon there too. A little tricky to get the transit because you have to be in a very specific, exacting location. It has to be somewhere public as well that you can go onto without getting in trouble for taking the shot. There's a lot of things. If you're off by a couple of centimeters, it could be the difference between getting it directly over the moon or directly next to the moon. There's a lot that goes into it. And this is the view from Port Canaveral from our fleet cam on top of Rusty's, located at the port. A great place to get a bite to eat if you're waiting for rockets to launch. You should be able to see it just starting over there. Yeah, you can't miss it now. It's that flaring light directly in the middle. And the other booster is still on its way back, Alex, right? How long does it take for the boosters to return from downrange to the port?
It sort of depends a little bit both on the weather and also what kind of tug it is tugging that drone ship back. For example, sometimes they use the ferry recovery vessels, Bob and Doug, right? They use those for tugging. Sometimes, though, there are much faster tugs that they use, which are Signet Warhorse the First and Signet Warhorse the Third, and those can go really fast, even with that booster on the deck of the drone ship. We've seen sometimes them going like 13 knots with the booster on top, which is a bit crazy, to be fair. All of the balances and everything that they need to take care of. But yeah, in that case, when they are going with those tugs, with the very fast tugs, they can go in about 2 days out and 2 days back. So a 4-day turnaround, for example, of a drone ship is possible. We've seen as low as 3.5 days, if I'm not mistaken, between landings that they've been able to support. So really, they can do it really fast in that sense. In the case of when they are tugged by either Bob and Dog, then in those cases, then it is usually closer to 4 to 5 days. It's a bit longer of a travel time.
But they can floor it with a booster on it, which is amazing. And yeah, they'll keep those fairing recovery ships out there for 2 missions at a time, so that they don't have to worry about that prolonged return time and the mission durations, which is also mind-boggling. Of course, the view from all of our robotic cameras that you can see here. This from the tracker of DUIs, I believe. And this is a great wide view so that you could see kind of the whole perspective of everything. I love it. You will also hopefully get the replay that will include the sounds of the VAB squeal that we've been talking about. Talk about lighting up the sky. Oh, that never gets old. Let's listen in. That's the squeal, folks.
you can see how bright the ground gets.
Yes, it legit looks like daytime with just a more yellowish light than blue. It's so cool. If you haven't seen a launch in person, you get a chance to, I highly recommend it. I know that's a dumb sentence for viewers of NSF, but still, I recommend it. And then we have the slightly tighter tracking shot as well. Oh, love that. And D-Wise with the awesome work. And of course, we always have the slow motion from D as well at the end. As we're watching the replays, by the way, I do want to thank Bideford for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. If you got one of those gifted memberships, please give Bideford a thank you. Always a pleasure to see her here in chat. So we appreciate you stopping by, Bideford. I mean, these views, Alex, these views don't get old.
Yeah, it's always nice to see Falcon 9 taking off to the skies. Just for the record, this was the 459th orbital flight of Falcon 9. It's 460th launch overall, which is bonkers to think about. Oh, thank you for those stats. By the way, you remember that failure of Falcon 9 last summer in July? This was the 107th launch since then by a Falcon rocket. Just saying. It's been less than a year.
Wow.
Already. Like, if you went back 5 years ago and you told me that there's a rocket that's been able to launch 107 times in a row without failure, I will say, oh, that must have been launching for 20 years at the very least. Like it happened for example, with Delta 2. But no, this is in less than a year.
Falcon 9 continues to impress. Oh boy. So we have the slow motion still coming with some replays that you haven't seen yet. So hang tight for the end here for sure. But I do need to thank the people that were here. Alex, thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure as usual, and hopefully, we got more launches coming soon.
I mean, couple days, right? And then there's also the new Shepard launch tomorrow. Lots of launches still happening. And D, thank you for joining us from the field.
Of course, this was a beautiful one tonight.
Indeed. We also had Max Evans out in the field providing a view, as we saw. And then we had Julia Bergeron out there as well, taking some of that awesome photography too. And I have to give a shout out, of course, to Jay Keegan, the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, all of that to make these views make it to your eyes. Appreciate everyone. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for tonight's launch broadcast. I think it is now time to take a look at the slow motion replays, and we will see you all next time here on NSF.
And here we go.
We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?